Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about an important market for Queensland and for Australia, Southwest China. Our speakers today are the Australian Consul General for Chengdu, Mr. Christopher Lim, Mr. Tim White, Commercial Consul and Trade Commissioner for Southwest China, Ms. Julia Zhang, Principal Business Development Manager with the Queensland Government, Trade and Investment Queensland in Chengdu, and Mr. Simon Hu, Business Development Manager, also with the Queensland Government with Trade and Investment Queensland in Chengdu. So once again, thanks all for joining us today. We really value the insights and contributions that our panelists and speakers will share today, and I'm looking forward to a good chat. So as Queenslanders get more accustomed to social distancing and the ever-changing and updating policies and restrictions for Australians during COVID-19, it's hard to keep across what's going on and the fast-paced change and disruption. And it seems even harder to digest information, sometimes conflicting, about what's going on in our key export markets. The change is happening so fast. And having time to think through that and digest it and what it means for Queensland is also challenging. So today we've gathered 4 experts on an important region of China, Southwest China, to let us zoom in strategically to that region to understand what's changed, what's new, and what could still be emerging. We're going to touch on some business trends and some impacts in Southwest China. And our speakers are going to prove that there's a lot more to that region than just Sichuan hot pot and pandas. We're not going to go too deeply into specific sectors, but we will skim over some sectors that are critical for Queensland and for China, and broadly for our Australia-China relationship. We're going to take some questions through chat, and hopefully, if time, we'll have an interactive session at the end. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce and to welcome our Australian Consul General for Chengdu, Mr. Christopher Lim. He'll set the scene and the context for our discussions today. Thanks so much, Consul General.
Thank you very much, everybody, and a special hello to all the Queenslanders that are listening in. Queensland has a great reputation here in Southwest China, not just because of your beaches or your beef, but also your educational institutions, as well as some biotech companies. As Julianne kindly introduced, I'm the Consul General here based in Chengdu. The Southwest China sort of region covers 4 provinces of Sichuan, Chongqing, Yunnan, and Guizhou. Altogether, it's around 200 million people. This region traditionally has lagged a little bit behind the Eastern Seaboard, but has grown tremendously over the last 20 years. In the last sort of 5 to 10 years, the growth rate has been tremendous. And so the question that we ask is how COVID-19 has affected the growth of this region. First, just to emphasize that the consulate is here in Chengdu. It consists of DFAT officials as well as Austrade officials. We have been open throughout the coronavirus situation. In Chengdu, there's also the TIQ office represented by Julia and Simon. So Queensland businesses are well serviced if you want to look into this market. Now, the situation on the ground here is that the numbers of cases here in Southwest China, or in Chengdu and Chongqing in particular, are actually very, very few. There have been no cases in Sichuan or Chongqing, for a number of days now. The numbers of people who are hospitalized are very low numbers, below 10, and there are only 13 people who are asymptomatic. So life has gone back, to normal in most cases. People, of course, wear masks as they go out. As you could see we are not really practicing social distancing. That's because there is no evidence of community transmission here in Chengdu, and it is not required by the local authorities, which we pay attention to. Basically, a lot of public places have opened, shopping centers have opened, domestic flights, and as well as trains, etc., have opened. The only things that have not opened at this stage are cinemas, that I could see. So therefore, things are getting back to normal. The new normal that we are experiencing, of course, has you have to wear masks, and nowadays everyone needs to have this QR code, this app that shows that you have not been in contact with anybody with COVID-19, nor have you traveled to a high-risk area. And a few weeks ago, this was considered quite quite an intrusive sort of thing. However, we in Australia are also thinking about something like this. Now, industry and commerce have come back here in Southwest China. Naturally, what we see is a reduction, a slow, gradual sort of return to work. But there is confidence, or quietly and cautious, that things will become better. There are sort of always concerns about unemployment and graduates getting sort of good employment when they finish their university. There's also concerns about disruption, but on the whole, it's steady as she goes. 2020 is an important year in China. They're determined to build a moderately prosperous society this year. There is a campaign to alleviate rural poverty by the end of this year, and also there is a goal to double GDP of China, from 2010 to 2020. That might be difficult because there have been contraction in China's GDP growth figures, particularly for the first quarter. Tim will go into that in greater detail, but there is definitely a contraction in GDP growth here in Sichuan. It's only it's a contraction of 6.8% in China totally, but in Sichuan it's only 3% contraction. Chongqing decreased by 6.5%, and the other provinces less. So the priorities of the government here are mainly to support policies for enterprises, particularly SMEs. They realize that SMEs employ a lot of people, so there's a lot of efforts to reduce taxes, allow for loans, etc., and making sure that businesses can operate as normal as possible. So the relief measures are plentiful, although we have also heard that sometimes it's also hard to access, but it may be just they're trying to actually get on top of it, and things are operating in an iterative process. Another key thing that local governments here are doing is to boost consumption, and they're very keen to boost the domestic consumption. Sichuan and Chengdu in particular had ridden on the wave of consumption for a while. You could see that in the hotels and the retail and the e-commerce channels. That is given a big boost. There's a lot of policies being put out. We don't know how well that would go because to allow for very healthy consumption requires sort of longer term confidence. I don't want to say a lot more other than this because Tim and will focus more about the economic situation and some of the sectors. But I do want to highlight is that that the governments here are very focused on the Chengdu, Chongqing economic circle project. This is a very sort of hard to sort of grasp term, but essentially it's a city cluster between Chengdu and Chongqing of the sorts that you would have heard about the Greater Bay Area in Hong Kong, and the and also the Yangtze River Delta thing around Shanghai. We believe that the authorities here are looking at urbanization and sort of coordination, etc., in order to have the next boost of development in the Western region. So the opportunities for us, Australian firms, could be in a range of areas relating to sort of livability and urbanization, architectural sort of services, building services, as well as education as well, and consumption, of course. So that's quite interesting. Just in terms of the last point that I want to make is that we believe that Southwest China continues to be a resilient market that is continues to be a high potential market for Australia. Things will change, and that's no doubt about it, throughout the world. But the trend towards a higher standard of living, towards consumption, and towards openness in general terms, we believe will still continue. Queensland have a lot of assets here. You've done extremely well over the decades to build relations. So it's not just the TIQ being here in China and Southwest China for a number of years. There have been sister city relationships that we built up. For instance, a sister city relationship between Brisbane and Chongqing, between Gold Coast and Chengdu, and even between Ipswich and Pengzhou in Chengdu. And Fraser Coast, Harvey Bay, has a long-standing relationship with Leshan. So on the basis of what you have and the assets that you have in terms and the support you have, I think that Queensland exporters have a very good foundation to expand here in Southwest China.
Thank you so much, Consul General. That's a great scene setter. And we'll try and unpack a bit more about the Chengdu-Chongqing economic circuit shortly. So first, Tim, you're the Trade Commissioner, Commercial Consul for Southwest China based in Chengdu. Can you give us a more granular overview of the business environment in Southwest China and what you're seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Jay, and thanks, Consul General. I just want to start with some comments on industrial and economic resumption we're seeing sort of at the national level, which obviously has an impact here in Southwest China as well. So as the CG mentioned, China's Q1 economic data came out last week, and it did show really quite significant slump across all key indicators, but pleasingly a significant recovery in March. So GDP contracted 6.8% year on year during the first quarter, which is actually the worst result since reporting began in 1992. But that was broadly in line with expectations given what we saw in January and February. March saw a contraction in indicators such as fixed asset investment and retail sales, but they did improve from January and February, as I say. In terms of consumption, there is a push, as the CG said, to drive domestic consumption and to encourage what some people are calling revenge spending by consumers. But it's fair to say the jury is still out as to how effective those measures will be. So Chinese city governments have now issued around 30 billion RMB in vouchers for consumers, and that's in addition to similar programs being run by private sector companies such as JD.com and Alibaba, and that's an attempt to fuel spending. But One of China's leading financial education institutions, the Southwest Uni of Finance and Economics here in Chengdu, which is quite well renowned for its work on analysing household consumption trends in China. They ran a survey in March which found that around 60% of households believe their income would shrink this year, and around 42% plan to reduce consumption this year. So I think that's an indicator of the challenges that we will see in the period ahead. China's two-way trade figures for Q1 also came out last week, and they were better than expected. Merchandise imports into China from all markets were down 0.9% year on year in March, which was a pretty positive result considering the broader situation and also supply chain issues globally. There's signs of recovery in the transport and logistics sectors. I know this is an issue of interest to Australian companies that are exporting to this region in particular. So major ports in China are now back to about 90% of average throughput compared with the same period last year. So that's quite positive. Aviation authorities in China did report that the sector had lost around 40 billion RMB in Q1, but a survey by Ctrip, which many of you will know is China's leading travel platform, found about 60% of respondents plan to be travelling again by August this year. Most of that would be domestic travel, of course, but that's a pleasing sign. Just want to talk through a few impacts in key sectors of interest to Australia and to Queensland. So first thing is that impacts are widespread, but certainly not uniform. There have been both challenges, and we would say tentatively that there are opportunities in the period ahead as well. So the most significant initial impacts were in our people industries. Of course, education and tourism took significant hits in Australia. Universities Australia said last week that they believe the sector at home could lose up to $23 billion and 21,000 jobs due to the COVID situation. That's not just related to China, of course, it's the global situation, but we know that, including because of the travel restrictions that are in place, around half of Chinese students that were planning to study in Australia this year were impacted by those travel restrictions. For fresh food exports from Australia, there was a substantial impact initially due to the demand shock here in China, but also logistics disruption. So seafood exports were impacted quite heavily in the immediate term. And for example, around 95% of Australia's lobster exports come to the China market. So that's a sector that saw a big initial impact. And as the CG mentioned, for a period, we did see a slump in the hospitality sector. Hotels and restaurants were closed or saw very low levels of business. But that has bounced back in recent weeks. And as of last week, according to a survey that the CG's team here has undertaken of a few five-star hotels here in Chengdu, they're back to around 30% of occupancy rates. So that's pretty positive. Other food and beverage exports were more resilient beyond fresh food exports. So wine stocks that were here in the China market meant that that sector was partially able to ride out the crisis. Wine Australia said that their wine sales to China were down about 14% by value in Q1, but all things considered, that's not a bad result. The majority of our meat exports to China, much of which comes from Queensland, of course, is frozen, so they can be held for longer periods. But of course, some companies experience delays at ports. Dairy saw weak demand for some products, particularly fresh milk and other fresh products, and consumers were looking more towards buying long life products. For the health sector, it's been a bit of a mixed picture. We know this is a priority for Queensland here in southwest China. We did see in Chinese hospitals, for example, that around 90% of non-COVID related surgeries and outpatient services were delayed. A large number of clinical trials were also delayed, but again, that system is beginning to bounce back. And we know that's an area, as I said, where Queensland is quite active. And also pleased to see that there's been very positive coverage of the work that Australian institutions are doing in the research field, including to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. And we know that UQ is one of the institutions that's at the forefront of those efforts. Across a range of sectors, of course, we've seen in-market events postponed or cancelled. That's affected us here in Southwest China with events such as the China Food and Drinks Fair, which was due to be held in late March. AusBiotech were planning to bring a delegation to Chengdu in May. Again, that's postponed. We had a sports technology mission planned that's been postponed as well, again, working with the TRQ team. And our activities in the education sector have also been delayed for now. We know that some major events in the China market are looking to move to digital platforms for delivery through the course of this year. So there'll be opportunities on that front as well. Just briefly on the forward agenda, in the immediate term for us, there's a significant amount of digital outreach that we're doing, like this webinar, of course. And we do think it's more important than ever that Australian companies have sophisticated and well-developed digital media strategies for China. And that includes, via channels such as WeChat and Weibo, but also industry-specific channels where that's appropriate for your business. On Festival of Australia, which of course is now our major annual series of events in the market, we're still in the planning for that program, looking at dates now running from late September through to mid-November, and we will provide more information on that soon. But it will be a mix of both online and hopefully offline events as well, depending on the situation at that time, including the travel restrictions. And just in terms of a few sectors where we see opportunities for partnership, again, Simon and Julia will talk about these in more detail, so I won't go into it too much, but health, of course, continues to be a top priority for us here in Southwest China. And we think that there'll be a lot of interest in renewed partnerships from China, and including Southwest China in health services to build resilience in China's health services sector. Of course, in public health and in biotech, as well as in digital health, which is really seen a huge boost through this period of the last couple of months. Consumer products, we do expect a rebound in demand. And of course, many of you will have heard about the international freight assistance mechanism that the Australian government is funding to try and support, particularly Australian fresh food exports, not just into China, but into other markets globally as well. But that is an attempt to meet some of that growing consumer demand here in China, but also acknowledging the challenges that companies are facing with logistics. Education, obviously there's a bit of a road ahead in terms of rebuilding confidence and reputations for Australian institutions in that sector. And we're working really closely with state and city governments, with the universities, with schools and other institutions on that campaign. And we know that education institutions in Australia are looking at a whole range of options, including flexible learning options for students online, for example, that will help to bridge the gap in this period when people can't travel. And finally, one other area which the CG touched on as well, urban services and livability, given the agenda, the ambitious agenda of Chengdu and Chongqing in particular on this front, we do expect a rebound in demand in that sector for Australian capability in design and architecture, in water and environmental services and those sorts of areas. So there are a few of the key sectors where we see opportunities emerging in the period ahead. Back to you, Jay.
Thanks, Tim. Jim, just a quick cheeky one before I let you off the hook though. Thank you so much for sharing the key opportunities and the viewpoint on the macro outlook and some, recent insights on consumer trends. One quick question. either on notice if you want to take it offline later. Mining. So I know that Consul General Lim, yourself, and our TRQ team are very good friends with our lithium buddies out your way. Is there, the audience would just like to know if there's any comments that either yourself or the Consul General could quickly make on the mining, mineral and resources sector for Southwest China.
Sure, yeah, yeah, spot on. It continues to be a big priority for us. And obviously we've seen a number of significant investments from this region into mining and energy in Australia. And those relationships continue to be strong. Obviously, I didn't really touch on investment just now, but there are challenges for investors, obviously, in the current environment, given the difficulty of people moving between markets. But in terms of demand for those bulk commodities here in the Southwest, I would say it's a reasonably positive picture. And we've certainly seen that overall, where demand for Australia's key mining exports, including iron ore, including coal, including lithium, as you mentioned, JA, have stood up fairly well through this period, in fact. And they've been one of the trade items that has not seen much of a slump through this period. And as the CG mentioned, we've also seen announcements here in this region, but also by governments across China, of quite ambitious stimulus packages. We're not seeing the same level of huge infrastructure spending as we saw in 2009 on ports and rail and those sorts of things. But we do expect that what we have seen from governments in terms of stimulus spending will continue to drive very strong demand for mining and resources products. So that, I think, is one of the bright spots in the relationship with all of China, but certainly here in the Southwest as well.
That's good news, Tim. And I know Austrade has a team that focuses on METS, mining equipment and technology, that's headed out of Beijing, and obviously TRQ works very closely. So I know that in Queensland we have some significant strength in METS. So we will be looking together with you, Tim and the Austrade team, to do another session perhaps on METS, where we can deep dive more into that area as well as mining more general. But thanks for those comments, Tim. So let's keep going in deeper and deeper into South China. And now I'd like to invite my colleagues from TRQ Chengdu, Ms. Julia Zhang and Mr. Simon Hu, to share some insights. So first on our China couch today is the lovely Julia. Julia focuses on agri, food and bev, education and training, and a few other government-to-government key areas for us. So Julia, let's try and unpack food and bev and ag. What's going on? What are you seeing there with the post-COVID recovery?
Thanks, JA. Hi, everyone. This is Julia Zhang from TRQ's office. Welcome you to the Panda's hometown. Let's guide you to the experienced hot pot spicy region. Because just now, CG and the team already gave you a big picture about this region. I might just deep details into this region. Firstly, I want to talk about the opportunity in this region, Southwest China. Southwest China's major urban centers are Chengdu, Chongqing, Kunming, and Guiyang. These second-tier cities offer reasonable access to imported food products and serve as a distribution hubs for imports in their respective provinces. Chengdu is the wealthiest and most advanced city in Southwest China. It is also a key part of the Chinese government of the Belt and Road that aimed at the traditional trade route over water and land. This region has less import penetration than most developed port cities. New imports face comparatively less foreign competition. Chengdu residents are also very open-minded, feminist Chengdu residents, and have the propensity for high quality and reliable and safe food products. A lot of major beef importers headquartered in Southwest China, especially in Chongqing, but there are sales channels throughout whole China. According to MLA's recent research report, Chinese consumers understand beef contains more proteins with higher nutritional value and support overall health and immunity. 79% of Chinese consumers increased home cooking during COVID-19, and 32% of affluent Chinese consumers purchased more beef during COVID-19 period. Chongqing, located in the Siren Transport Corridor, linkage from West China to South China Sea, Qingzhou Port, and then railway to Europe and other countries. Secondly, I want to tell you about the COVID-19 impact after the recent survey of the two major retail stores in Sichuan. The first one is Chengdu Itoyakodo, which is a Japanese supermarket, hypermarket, which operates hypermarket-style store selling food, apparel, and household goods in China. The company opened its first store in Chengdu in 1997 and currently has 7 stores in Chengdu. I don't know why. I heard from Itoyakodo, they said they are only successful in Chengdu. During COVID-19, below are the top selling products categories in Itoyakodo. First is the instant food, and then canned food, household goods, and also the Thai jasmine rice, very popular recently. And the global logistics issue caused the delay of the flowing products like milk powder from Australia, Europe, and New Zealand, and also the Western seasoning products also delayed due to the COVID-19. The second one is Chengdu Hongqi chain store, which is the first listed company among the convenience stores in China market, with over 3,100 stores across Sichuan province, only in Sichuan province, not in other parts of China. Since the beginning of this year, they started to sell Queensland honey products. Their top-selling import food products, according to the survey, are UHT milk, concentrated juice, household goods again, and also Thai jasmine rice. High demand are imported ice cream products also popular in summer season. Currently, they have the Italian ice cream. They are seeking more ice cream from other countries, also from Queensland or Australia. Besides the above-mentioned food products, we also see other opportunity as pet owners nowadays become increasingly young and pay more and more attention to the safety and the scientific content composition of pet food. Pet food market is expected to further grow in the following years. Of course, there are some challenges. Like Tim mentioned, the global logistics issue, supply chain issue due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Southwest are located in inland, not coastal area, so the logistics always the big list. Food service sector shut down during COVID-19. At this stage, only 20 to 30%, like CG, they did a survey, Chinese restaurant resume opening. It takes a long time back to normal, especially beef industry has a drastic impact. According to one major beef importer, their sales on Western restaurant declined 70 to 80%. On hot pot restaurant, dropped 20 to 30%. On Chinese restaurant, reduced 50%. That's my sharing point for food and agri sector in Southwest China. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Julia. I appreciate that. So, Julia, I'd like us to have a quick moment now to talk about education and training. And before you do, I'd love to hear your insights. I might just need you to hold the microphone just as you continue. Maybe just if you can get a bit closer.
Okay.
That would be great. Yeah. Thanks, Julia. Okay, so education and training, what advice have you got? What are you seeing?
Yeah, there are a lot of things growing in South China Southwest China education sector, and of course from the general policy of China education sector, Double First initiative leads to the high-level research partnership and the vocational education reform across China, generate teachers training and professional development, and research and IP outcome commercialization. We can also foresee uprising the local international school and programs. Currently, we have 70 programs in Chengdu, and there are some high-quality students show interest in both long-term and short-term study in Queensland. Of course, you all know that online education is booming now. The challenge is always there. No direct flight to Queensland, but we are working hard to make it happen one day. Australian education brand is still weak in Southwest China compared to US and UK. And due to travel restriction during COVID-19, all study tours were canceled or postponed. Apart from the opportunity and challenge, Southwest China does have some strengths. As CG mentioned, we have the official sister cities, so many. That's laid a very solid foundation for international education exchange between Queensland and Southwest China. And also the establishment of TIQ Chengdu office play a crucial role in promoting Queensland education and raise the profile in Southwest China. Study Queensland and Study Gold Coast are very active in this region, and they organize a lot of market campaign facilitated by TIQ Chengdu and Australia Chengdu. And this raised our Queensland brand awareness significantly. And Sichuan and Chongqing are quite open to international market. We also have very strong team Australia support led by CG. We have DFED, Australia, Gold Coast City Council. We have office and representative here in Southwest China. And also West China got more funding from central government. We also have some market entry advice for our Queensland education sectors. We need, when you enter into this market, better do some market research for your program, attend an education program, a show or exhibition, maybe currently via online, also adapt and then be more proactive with working with our TIQ and attending our TIQ marketing activities, and consider investing Chinese social media to enhance your program and education awareness. And also conduct one business matching meeting where we Zoom or WeChat, and even the language trainings. Lastly, I also want to share with you, opportunity always hides behind the threats. So stay strong, stay safe, and be confident. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. I appreciate that. That was a great wrap up on our two key areas of existing exports and relationships, so ag, food, and education training. That's really great. Now I want to change now focus from areas of traditional strength to emerging areas where Queensland and Southwest China are highly complementary. So Simon Hu, you're our business development manager. You have the hard and enviable job of focusing on services. So we've talked a lot about health, technology, aged care, but also sport. These are some of the key areas that you're leading our Queensland government effort on, working with the CG and Tim in Southwest China. So today, Simon, can I invite you to talk a little bit about health first?
Okay, thank you, Jay. This is Simon from TIQ Chengdu office. It's very lovely to meet all of you to share our information and some market brief in Southwest China market. Actually, trade and investment in China have been greatly affected by the outbreak of COVID-19, especially China's health system. It is under tremendous pressures recently. Negative impacts have engendered on many related companies and businesses within this system, such as hospitals, pharmaceuticals, labs, aged care companies, and medical manufacturers. But however, on the other hand, we can also find some opportunities and new trends which can help our Queensland entrepreneurs get through the difficult time. TIQ Chengdu office covers the business areas in Southwest China, where the top hospitals, biotech companies, and medical colleges are located. For instance, we have the famous West China Hospital in Chengdu and Southwest China hospitals in Chongqing, Sichuan University, Chongqing Medical University, and some top biomedical companies such as HitGen, Odinvax, and Taiji Group. Here I want to say more about the West China Hospital. This hospital ranks #2 in China, in mainland China, and it is well known for the transnational research. And international cooperation is quite welcome by them, for sure. For example, West China Hospital has already established the Infectious Disease Research Center with Barry Marshall, the Nobel laureate in 2015, I think. And Odinvax, a local biomedical company in Chengdu, signed an MOU in this February with Griffith University to co-work on the development of coronavirus vaccine. So after as one of the strategies, the local government in Southwest China has always attached great importance to the development of the biotech industry. Both Chengdu and Chongqing, the cluster cities, have amazing plans on the health sector in accordance with incentive policies to, to provide a fantastic business environment tailored for this industry. So due to the impact of the epidemic, we know the R&D of vaccine and pharmaceuticals are becoming more and more prominent. Queensland has great advantages in this regard. As we know, the famous University of Queensland has received a lot of inquiries from all over the world on such cooperation offered during these days on the vaccine development. So I believe biotech could be a very opportunity for all of us. And another opportunity we detected is health service. And one of what the Chinese health system learns from this pandemic is the importance and necessity of having professional trainings for not only doctors, but the policymakers. Because they realize that to truly secure the safety of the public health, the level of both doctors and watchdogs must be elevated simultaneously. As we know, the Chongqing Health Commission is considering to organize a special training program for all the presidents of the public hospitals in Chongqing to help them to upgrade their skills on hospital management and disease control and prevention. And Queensland Health team could do that, I think. And on top of that, I would like to talk about the aged care. Regardless of the pandemic or not, aged care is always a hot topic in recent years. Both central government and local government aspire to develop this industry because of the fast growth of China's elder people and the huge demand in the future. So, as we know, TIQ initiated a consortium, the Australian Silver Industry Group, aka SIG, to help Queensland companies to enter this market and build a presence. And this consortium consists of 5 core companies and covering fields of consulting, planning and design, operation, training, and related digital solutions. And last May, we had this SIG mission to Chengdu and met with some local governments and aged care companies. They are quite interested in this consortium and this service. Because the service from this group can provide a one-stop solution of aged care. It's impressive and make us be quite distinguished from other competitors in this market. So now it has built a name on the market, and we hope more and more Queensland companies, aged care companies, come here to have a look and to join this Queensland team. As last, I want to say something about the digital health, which is also a popular topic in China, even across the world. Because of the pandemic, there are social distancing and isolation policies conducted in many countries and regions. So the digital medical service and the related solutions are more like a must-do action. So it will definitely become a trend in future. the application scenarios include wearable devices, physical health data monitoring, digital platform, and remote diagnosis. For this part, I would like to invite Tim to give us a more detailed introduction.
Sure, thanks, Simon. Hope you can hear me okay, JA. Yeah, I think, Simon, you've covered it pretty well, actually. But we've definitely seen really significant expansion of digital health capability and uptake of digital health services here in China in the last couple of months. So even pre-COVID, China was a world leader in this area. So I think McKinsey estimated there were around 165 million digital health users in China as of last year. But we've seen, as you can imagine, just really rapid expansion in the last couple of months as well. And we do expect that to continue. There's big players, obviously, in the market that are looking to position themselves as world leaders. So the likes of Alibaba and Tencent, obviously those companies have very close links with Australia already in areas like e-commerce for food and beverage and consumer products. And we do think that companies like those will potentially provide a bit of a pathway to market for Australian digital health companies as well. There are some risks to manage on cybersecurity, on IP protection, but we're very happy to work with companies in that sector from Queensland who are looking at this market because we do think there's huge potential there.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Simon. So just to sum up, there, biotech, health services, aged care, digital health are all areas where Queensland needs to dig deeper and unpack some opportunities working with Austrade, Consulate and TIQ. So before we go into a bit more of a final open discussion and Q&A, one last point, Simon, just on sport, but I just need you to put the microphone a bit closer. So sport is a new area for us. We're working with Austrade. We are hoping to have a digital or a real mission. So Simon, tell us a little bit about why Chengdu, why sport for Southwest?
Okay, Jay. Before we pivot to the sports industry, I want to give you some numbers. According to a report by Chengdu Sports Bureau, in 2018, the total revenue of this city's overall sports industry was about 13 billion Australian dollars. And during the last 6 years, this figure grew by an average rate of 28% each year, far exceeding the growth of rate of its GDP, which is 8%. So we can see it's a very big market and potential. Most importantly, the Chengdu government has a quite a unique strategy to develop its sports industry, which I prefer to call event drive. Let me explain to you. In the past, Chengdu successfully hosted a lot of world-class games, such as the FIBA, Federation of International Basketball Association, 3+3 events. And in last year, the World Police and Fire Games. And over the next 5 years, the city has a very ambitious plans to host 4 to 5 world-class games, including the University Sports Games in 2021, the World Table Tennis Championships in 2022, and the AFC Asian Cup football games in 2023, and the World Games in 2025. And the Chengdu government officials have even expressed their interest to host the Olympics in 2030, I think. So now you can understand the city's strategy, the event drive. First, the city will host a lot of world-class games to gain the name, to raise the public awareness about the city's industry. And because all the games requires high standard infrastructures like stadium, metro lines, airport, so the infrastructure industry is developed. The government will spend a lot of money on it. And at the same time, the industry developed. So it's very logical and quite smart, I think. And to deliver on this very ambitious agenda, Chengdu does require international expertise and resources. I'm going to share some opportunities we detected at the market, and Queensland companies may get involved with and run a business for. First, of course, it must be the infrastructure. Let me take the best example. There's an ongoing project called Tianfu Olympic Sports Park. Tianfu means the land of abundance in Chinese. It's also the nickname of Chengdu. This project is located in the east part of the city. It's prepared for hosting those world-class games, as I just mentioned. It could meet the facility needs of competition, training, entertainment, and residential space for all the athletes and visitors and all the customers. The total investment of this project is about 5.28 billion Australian dollars, and it covers an area of 86 square kilometers. The park will include 3 functional clusters, competition venues, training facilities, and commercial zone. This project is to be finished by 2025, just before the World Games. Its master plan is already done, and some parts are under construction. But there are still business opportunities on design work on specific stadiums and public art and landscaping. After all those events complete, of course, the management and the operation. I mean, how to make use of this all infrastructures in a sustainable way. So that means business as well. And the second opportunity we detect is the sports education and training. There's a school named Chengdu Sports University. It has already announced that they will relocate to Tianfu Olympic Sports Park. The reason why I want to mention this university is because as we know, the 60% of the rehabilitation professionals of China's national sports team are coming from this university. And Queensland education powers are also very good at this field of rehabilitation, physical fitness research, sports medicine, sports tech, trainer program, and physical education. So I think they can do, the Queensland companies can do advantages in this marketplace. And the last one is the marketing and publicity. We know Queensland and Australia has rich experience in holding and marketing international sports games. In 2000, Australia hosted the Olympics, and in 2018, the Gold Coast hosted Commonwealth Games. So by that, so Queensland companies can help the Chengdu government to improve their international influence, which Chengdu government aspire. So why not make the most use of this experience, which Chengdu happens to desire for? The opportunity is just here: the international marketing, creative campaigns, and PR service. And just in this month, Chengdu government is starting to solicit ideas and creative plans for the opening ceremonies of the 2021 University. So that's a very kind of opportunity I just mentioned. And that's all for my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Now, we've only got a few minutes before we wrap up. So I do want to thank sincerely the Consul General, Tim, Julia, and Simon for your insights today. This is just an entree to the many opportunities and challenges and areas where we can work together for Southwest China, but it is an important market. Before we wrap up, just if I can ask all of you to tell me, with COVID-19, are you still confident in second and third tier cities? Because Southwest China is traditionally a strong area for that, for Queensland trade and investment and education drive. CG and Tim, you want to kick off?
I would definitely say yes. It continues to be an area that I believe that Queensland and also Australian companies as a whole could actually make a lot of inroads. Having said that, I also know that the world is changing as we speak in regards to COVID-19. There will be challenges, ahead, and there will be sort of issues that new issues that we never thought about that will arise. But I believe that in Southwest China, and particularly in the context of efforts pushed by the central government of China in relation to the Chengdu Chongqing Economic Circle and trying to lift the standard of living in the Western region, there will remain very, very strong sort of opportunities for us. Because at the end of the day, what we have to offer to the Chinese side are things they need and want, whether it ranges from iron ore to coal to beef to education to sports to technology. Yes, they are developing their technology, but there is also a lot of room for collaboration. So in all those things, we are highly complementary in many, many respects. So I think the opportunities will continue to last.
Thanks, CG.
I think the the Consul General's put it very well. I don't really have much to add apart from to say that we think the fundamentals are very strong, and this will continue to be, particularly Chengdu and Chongqing, those two cities. They will continue, we believe, to be fast growth and high spending markets. We know that consumers here in this city spend a larger proportion of their incomes on daily consumption than their counterparts in other first-tier cities in China. We expect those fundamentals to still be there post-COVID. So, and as the CG said, it's in terms of Queensland's capability and Chengdu and Chongqing in particular, those two cities' interest in attracting international partnerships, the sectors are really well aligned. So yeah, we're definitely still very confident in the longer term. We've got a bit of a way to go, but we think there will be, a bounce back when the time is right.
Thanks, Tim. So maybe just to wrap up then, we will continue to zoom in on Southwest China, and with Team Australia's collective efforts, the Consulate, Austrade, Trade Investment Queensland, we'll be keeping an eye on the Chengdu-Chongqing Economic Corridor to understand opportunities in areas that have been outlined today: health, services, technology, consumer, ag, F&B, as well as education. We will also be working together on the important aspect of investment attraction. And I know that there have been some questions looking for further detail on investment. We will look at those offline. As the Consul General and Tim mentioned, Chinese investment interest in Australia continues. COVID-19 has had an impact. There are some areas of emerging opportunities for us, whilst traditional areas such as mining remain, but there are some challenges with COVID and with other government-to-government relationship matters that the world is looking at now with closed borders and so on following COVID. So I wanted to thank our panelists once again and thank the Queensland audience. We hope to see more Queensland impact, more reach in Southwest China, digitally as well as in live once travel restrictions lift. I wanted to thank everyone and also to wish everyone in advance a happy Anzac Day. I'm sure everyone in the consulate tomorrow, as well as here in Queensland, will all be up at 6 a.m. with our candles, our torches at curbside to celebrate this important Remembrance Day. So thanks once again, Team Australia in Chengdu, Trade Investment Queensland. You'll be seeing more of us, Queensland audience, as we roll out more TIQ webinars over the next few weeks, focused on China, what's happening with COVID-19 and where the opportunities and challenges lay for Queensland. So everyone, stay well and thanks so much for your time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.